All right, welcome to John Wall Street's Big Business on Campus, powered by Playfly Sports and sponsored by Shorts Travel Logistics. Thanks for having us and listening to our podcast and our videos here. We appreciate it. All of our audience has been amazing and all the feedback has been amazing. So thank you. Corey and I really are excited about continuing this amazing podcast. And we've got an amazing guest this week to join us here. So thanks for joining us, Tim Pernetti. He's the commissioner of the the American Conference. I slipped up.
No, you got it right. You saved yourself a $5 fine there, so you got it right.
Yeah, exactly. That was going to be one of the questions: is the rebranding and how you led that innovation on your end. So welcome. You've got an amazing career. Everything from being an athletic director to being in the pro sector. So we want to hear all about that, and as well as all the new innovations and thoughts you have going forward for your conference and college sports. So Corey and I welcome you to the podcast, and we'd love to kick off.
It's great to be with you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with two people so close to the ever-changing industry, and appreciate the time. Let's get into it.
Well, Tim, I do need to know, do you guys have like a fine jar in the office?
No, there's no fine jar in the office because the office people actually got it straight.
Okay.
I think I beat them over the head so much for 12 months when we were going through this branding exercise that it was important from our perspective that everybody in the league office was tight on what we were going to do. And then we've just got everybody's kind of, an evangelist of the brand right now. Like I got interviewed on the field at East Carolina on Thursday by some local guy who's covered the conference for years. And we go on live TV and he says American Athletic Conference 3 times, and we cut and he thanked me. And I was just like, you owe me $15. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, you paying attention? Like the conference rebrand. He felt terrible, but it takes all of us to kind of remind everybody, but I'll give credit to the conference office. It's pretty tight, but I have given my Venmo out to some officials and some TV people and some others.
We'll post it here on the video for anybody who messes up and wants to, take responsibility.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, Mike, why don't we start with the rebrand? And Tim, why don't you tell us about how that came about and how you landed on the American as ultimately the brand?
So it goes all the way back to April of 2024 when I first got the phone call. I was about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year out of the IMG Academy sale to private equity to EQT. And I was there and continuing to run it and really enjoying it. And I got the phone call about the American job. And I started to do my research and I had a preliminary screening and I started to dig in. And I think I Googled AAC one day. And everything in Google defaulted to the ACC. And I remember making a note, like literally writing a note down to talk to the presidents about this, saying like, this is a problem, right? Like it's getting confused. There's an identity problem there. Just kind of filed it away. Ended up in the job and commissioned a brand study right out of the gate. And we talked to hundreds of people on campuses, from student athletes to professors to athletic directors and presidents. And what I realized was everybody had a different point of view on what the brand stood for. Like to me, it wasn't a brand, it was just a name. And we started a year-long process to dig into, okay, what are the characteristics of this conference? What do we stand for? What do we want to be known to stand for? And as we went through it, we nailed down on 3 important pillars. Like to me, a brand is more than a name. It actually has to stand for something. It has to mean something to people. So where we landed was innovation. And this is kind of like a mission for me. I don't know where I'll be in 5 years, but I want the American to be known as the most innovative conference in America. And innovation was table stakes for us. And we've had some examples of that this year and things that we've done. Grit, it's just a tough ass league. Like I go out there and I watch games and events and I watch kids compete. Like it's a low ego, blue collar, just tough league. And grit just jumped off the page at us. And then service, I think, is the last one, is a hugely important part of any organization, right? In college sports, you service huge communities of people, right? That literally sports is such a huge part of their lifestyle that they invest their disposable income in and they look for great experience in. So we have to remind ourselves that, we also are an organization that's built on service. Like we service student athletes, we service universities, but we service the communities around them. So it took 12 months to get the brand in shape. We put a whole brand strategy together. We put a dossier together for all of our media partners and all the writers, and everybody got it on the same day. before media day, and it played out really well. The most fun part of it was we sort of turned some call it a mascot, some call it a symbol. We turned Soar the Eagle on, right? So the first conference in America to have an eagle as a mascot or a symbol or whatever it is. But Michael understand this from, and I'm reaching for something to show you, but Michael understand this from the business side is it's new intellectual property, right? That we will take to the market and we will commercialize. And, and literally in everything we're doing, from the challenge coins where you see the eagle on the back of it to it having its own social media handles, like we brought that to life to be a voice. And now we have new IP in the marketplace to monetize. And we're having a lot of fun with it, I think, which is the most important part.
This episode is brought to you by Shorts Sports Travel Logistics, the fastest growing leader in college athletics travel and the trusted choice for over 108 athletic departments nationwide. With their promise, Team Travel Made Easy, Sports simplifies every aspect of team travel: air charters, commercial flights, buses, and hotels. By turning complex logistics into a competitive advantage, they've become the trusted partner for programs committed to winning on and off the field.
Yeah, you hit on a
That's
couple
awesome.
of key points
That's
there that I
awesome.
just
Yeah.
love. The value of the mascot, one, and then two, just the clarity and consistency of the brand is such an important piece. Getting lost,
Yeah.
particularly when you're talking about like social media, right? I talked to Arizona about this not that long ago. Arizona uses the hashtag Bear Down. That's
Mhm.
the team's rallying cry, right? But Bear Down is also the Chicago Bears rallying cry, and so to try to find any Arizona content on social is a mess. And so
Yeah.
the need to stand out, the need for clarity, consistency, super
Yeah. And
important.
that was important, Corey, right? Like you not only need the tenets of the brand, it needs to speak simply and just the American work, like the word, we have the best word, I think, of any conference, right? And that, yeah, American is just such big, broad appeal. So the word was going to stay one way or the other, but athletic conference like the American, it's clearly college sports. We dropped athletic out of it. I didn't want to ever see AAC again to eliminate that confusion. But the motto or sort of the mantra was important too. And as we looked at the future of the conference, like we have so much upside, and we came along with Built to Rise, and it just sort of hatched out of a meeting, and that's what we're building our brand around now. But we're off to a really good start. It's resonated in the marketplace. I love to hear TV announcers correct themselves on the air, so I think we're seeping into people's brains slowly but surely.
Let's talk some big picture stuff.
All right.
Where do you see the G5 conferences playing into this broader ecosystem as college sports continues to evolve?
Yeah, it's a challenging environment, and everybody I talk to, whenever you look at a new opportunity in your career, you lean on people, mentors, people in your life, old bosses. And everybody I talked to told me I was nuts to be doing this. And they said, especially, for a conference at that level, I said, but those conferences have more opportunity because they have to take more risk, right? They have to have the stomach to do things differently. So the big picture is sort of where the G5, soon to be G6, right, with the Pac-12 fits into the ecosystem. There's a couple different tenets to that. Whether it's the college football playoff or the future of sports, at the FBS level, like we're in the room, we're in every conversation, we have meaningful input into everything. The other side of it is collegiate athletics is I never use the word fair because like I just don't believe in that. I'm more of like what you earn, you get. But there are huge gaps between the upper tier and everyone else in collegiate athletics, and that's challenging, right? Because in our league, nobody's trying to do anything different than they're doing in the Big Ten or the SEC or the Big 12 or the ACC, right? We're trying to invest, we're trying to create a great experience for student athletes, and we're trying to win. So you're just trying to do it maybe with less resources. So I think the big challenge in the future will be how these conferences are resourced through the commercial enterprise, right? With media rights being a primary component of it. But we when I got to the conference, we ended our relationship with a third party that we had on sort of like multimedia rights, just because having run IMG College and seeing like the conference deals are just not super comprehensive. And as we're talking to private capital partners on the outside, I wanted to create our own commercial enterprise that's currently inside the conference, but I could spin out, sell to a private capital group. Like we just wanted some optionality. So I think in order to create more commercial upside, you have to do things differently. Like just doing it the same old way at a conference level. Like for schools, it's different. At a conference level, you have to get more innovative. You have to be willing to consider selling the name of your conference, like to a naming rights partner. The jersey patch legislation is coming to an end, right? So that's going to be open season for, another opportunity to generate revenue. But we don't think about it any other way than the autonomy conferences think about it. We're all trying to do the same thing. And we look at student athletes as our partners and everything we do. Like, if we're going to generate revenue and create profile and do something different, student athletes are our partners in this. So let's make sure we give them a voice in it and that we give them the opportunity to benefit from it. But this level, like, you wonder if some consolidation of it in the future, to be more national at the group of five level makes sense. Like, and certainly with me, I think everything should be discussed. Whether you do it or not is not relevant, right? I think the industry has struggled from a reluctance to discuss change for a long time.
Is national consolidation
Yeah.
is the path to closing the gap, in your opinion?
I don't know, but what's the harm in having that conversation, right? Because I would argue that when you get into things like expansion, okay, let's take that as an example. When you get into things like expansion, at the autonomy level, they can expand and be active in that space. And even when something dramatic happens, like Texas and Oklahoma leave the Big 12 to go to the SEC, everybody's fine. Like, Brett came into the Big 12, he modernized the business. He doubled the media rights contract with Texas and Oklahoma walking out the door, right? So everybody was fine. I would argue at the group of five level, we're not as resilient to that type of change, because in the past, what everybody has done is, let me feed off somebody else to fill my stomach, and whatever happens to them happens to them. And I'm sitting here saying, why are we not talking about building something different instead of tearing each other apart? I think there is something there to be discussed within the group of five, soon to be group of six.
So, Tim, you mentioned something interesting during that answer around using third parties. So, obviously, fair game question from
Sure.
a Playfly sports guy, but love to hear your thoughts and how you think about it. Right? Not only are you a commissioner, but you were an athletic director. You had experiences running one of the largest service providers in the ecosystem. So, how do you think about it? I get the idea of
Mhm.
creating your own enterprise, right? And that makes sense, gives you that optionality. I love that. How do you think about bringing in third parties to help you actually optimize those efforts and maybe different slices, and what you think is something that maybe you can tap into all the great sales training, performance data of someone else, as well as owning your own optionality at the same time? Or just how has that evolved based on all your different
That's a great
experiences?
question, Mike. And knowing your position, I think you'll appreciate this, is I wanted to start from zero. And we had an opportunity where, when I started, the agreement we had in place was coming to an end. And I saw it as an opportunity to exit that agreement on good terms and sort of reset the decks. And from the beginning of it, the goal was to have the conference control all of its commercial IP and all of its commercial rights, which, the media rights being the primary, which we already have assignment from our schools to control. But beyond that, the answer was the same all along. We're going to bring it in. We're going to look at it. We're going to develop a plan that's strategic. We're going to hire a chief commercial officer. We're going to hire some people in, but we are going to partner with people on the outside to monetize the key assets. So I think, as you look at it from a sponsorship perspective, we've been out there talking to, we've talked to you guys about it. We've been out there talking to agencies about working with us on the big ticket assets. And I think that's something that we will look to do. So we will partner with the outside. But as it relates to, like, having someone that's formally on and paying us a nominal guarantee to commercialize our rights in the space, I'm not interested in that anymore, because it's not that I don't think the Learfields and the Playflies and the JMI, like, I think you guys do an unbelievable job for so many schools, and I'm very familiar with the business. But the assets of the conference are very limited, right? So I think we have to sort of rein it all in, think about what we want to turn on that we haven't turned on in the past. Like, I'm sure that before we got here, they weren't talking about conference naming rights and jersey patches and sports betting and creating a new symbol of the league to be intellectual property. Like, they weren't talking about that stuff. So we're going to need the partnerships. in order to get the maximum value and to optimize key assets. So to me, it started with, all right, let's sort of get it all in the building. Let's set a strategy. Let's hire the right people to lead it day to day, because like I can't do it. I tried to do all of it, but I can't, which we've done. And now it's all right, who do we partner with on the outside to optimize? And that also plays into private capital. And like this private capital plane's been circling the airport in college for a year and a half. And a lot of it is making a bet on future growth and value. I feel strongly that by creating American Rise Ventures, our new commercial division, that we can find a significant amount of upside there that we don't currently have on the books. And I think that will give us more appeal as we're talking about bringing capital in now to try to accelerate our growth agenda, not only at the conference, but across all of our institutions.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up private capital
That's awesome.
because you spoke at our event in January where that was the topic of the day, and at the time in January, private capital or private equity in college sports seemed like an inevitability. But here we are, like 9 months later, and still waiting for an investment at the school or conference level. So I guess the question is, what's been the holdup, and is it still coming?
It's definitely coming. I've never been more convinced. And I think I said this at your event. Somebody you put me on the spot. You're like, what's the timeline? And I refuse to give, like, I don't like to lock into timelines, but it's definitely going to happen without a doubt. Whether it happens at a conference level or maybe more likely at an individual institution, it's happening. What has been like you said, I think you used the word holdup. I don't know if it's been a holdup. What I would tell you is college presidents and athletic directors are being really smart in that they're getting educated, right? It's kind of an ironic word, but you do have a lot of people on the campuses that, I feel lucky that I spent most of my career in the private sector of sports. So I have the private sector background, but a lot of people in our industry don't. So when I started, I got very loud about private capital as an opportunity, but we spent a year educating people. Like the Weatherford's a friend of mine. I brought Drew into our annual meeting with Newman Delaney to talk to our membership and our presidents about here's how it works. Chad Hutchinson from Arctos is a friend. He came in and talked to our athletic directors. I brought other groups in. So we spent the year meeting with people, vetting opportunities, sketching out sort of like what could the structure look like, but most of all, getting educated. What I would tell you is you pick up the phone and call any of these groups, they spent the year getting educated too. Like college is just a different animal. And everybody's saying private equity, equity, equity. What our ADs and presidents know from me bringing people in to educate them is there's 100 ways to finance to finance these deals and structure them and do them. From our standpoint, I love to be first, but we got to get it right. And to get it right, this is as much about finding the right partner as it is the capital. Like capital is a commodity right now. It's out there. It can be had. If you want it, you can get it. I've told our presidents you could borrow against your endowments at 3% if you want it right now. But to grow the commercial enterprise, you need to be in business with someone that has the capital and also has resources, if not owns a company in the commercial space that can help you come in and supercharge what you do. Like the capital's great, but we need the expertise. When we sold IMG Academy to EQT, the number took the headline because it was a monster. The people we got access to in that deal, it blew my mind how much expertise we had access to after the sale that we didn't have prior. And I think that's really important to us is like we're taking our time to find the right partner. The capital's out there, but finding the right partner, you really have to work hard to thread that needle.
So are there partners that are, suggesting new creative revenue strategies that, could help change the economics for a league like the American? What are we talking about in terms of expertise here?
They all have an idea. If not, I rephrase that. They all have lots of ideas, right? And everything from like, this is not rocket science. It's really not for like the three of us, especially Mike, who's running a huge commercial business, is some of it sounds similar, right? Like colleges, universities, it can't just be about media rights anymore. Because even at the conferences that distribute the most money, like 6 figures in media rights, most of these schools are still being subsidized by the universities, right? But everybody's got an idea. Some of the ideas are pretty basic, which is, all right, you built this new stadium, XYZ school, and you didn't really develop the premium the right way. Here's how much you're leaving on the table. Let's draw 25, 30 million down out of our capital and help you maximize your premium to generate $200 million in value over the next 10 years. There's basic stuff like that. The one that's really interesting to me that not a lot of people are talking about, the SBJ wrote about it once, is real estate. Because
We
these
got a whole,
campuses, like they're sitting on, I mean, look at how much land they're sitting on that hasn't really been developed or monetized. I think real estate is a super interesting one. Everybody's focused on like athletics and tickets and venues. Well, what about real estate on these campuses? Like that's a huge opportunity.
So good setup, Tim. We're going to be releasing a thematic report on the mixed-use real estate opportunity tied to stadiums and arenas, and that includes
Mhm.
on college campuses in the next couple of weeks. So thank you for the plug. But what about
And
the?
for the record, I had no idea you were writing that. So
Yeah, I know.
great coincidence there.
We'll get you the copy though. Don't worry.
Appreciate
Um,
it.
What about the model that your buddy Brent Richard over at IMG Academy has been talking about, and trying to bring more athletes into the college ecosystem, if not necessarily at the varsity level?
Mhm. So Brent is a great friend. And I actually met Brent when he was at Rain when I was doing the NYCFC launch. He was one of the bankers in the room and got to know him. And then he ran corporate development at Endeavor when I was running IMG College, and we got to know each other. And we never really worked closely together day to day until the IMG Academy. Like I was there about a year before overseeing it at a corporate level. And then during COVID, Brent came down and we sort of partnered up and went. And it was an unbelievable marriage because like I'm more of an operator and a people leader, and Brent filled a lane that I didn't have as much experience in, and looking at strategic and M&A and how do we create new products. And I think the IMG Academy story is an unbelievable story from 2020 all the way through the sale. But we used to talk about this all the time and say, yeah, the price tag is big here, but the beauty of it is outside of a signature on a piece of paper, you're all but guaranteed that investment is going to be a roster spot at the end of that investment. And we matriculated 100% every single year to a roster spot. So what's changed, and Brent and Drew Weatherford and I have been talking about it a ton, is the roster spot's harder to access now than ever before. And in some sports, like the roster spots are retracting, if not sports getting cut. You see a lot of that. People have used house as an excuse to contract. It's a huge mistake. On the other side of the campus, you have challenges with driving application rates up, getting more enrollment on campus, being able to have enrollment demand so you can increase the tuition at bigger clips. And I agree 100% with this strategy. I talked about it at Media Day. I use the hashtag and everything else, like creating more opportunities in athletics, turning on new sports, creating new roster spots, and this idea of like JV type or varsity light type things. It's going to drive more applications, enrollment, and tuition into your university. Does it have a cost? Of course it does. Kids that play sports, there's a cost to it. Having said that, I feel strongly that that strategy can help colleges and universities solve a challenge they have on their campus, right? Because what gives you more affinity and community than athletics? And it's the single strongest marketing arm any university's ever going to have. So I think what those guys are talking about makes complete sense. In fact, USF has turned two sports on, I think. Yeah, beach volleyball, women's lacrosse in the last couple of years. And they're seeing a huge uptick there. And I've talked to other universities and campuses in our league about this idea like, hey, don't let house scare you away. If your campus is having a challenge, like turn on new roster spots in sports. Kids now are willing to pay for them full freight. Like the scholarships are great, but scholarships are not unlimited. Kids want to continue to play sports so badly that they will pay through the nose to do it. So I think this strategy makes a lot of sense, not only for Brent's business, which I personally will always be tied to and love the people there, but it makes sense for the college business too. It can help serve both sides and the challenges that they're both having.
You talked about sports serving as a marketing vehicle. Basketball has for a while been kind of a source of national visibility for your conference.
Mhm.
But moving forward, as more of the resources get allocated to football, presumably that most of the schools are allocating more of the resources to football, and you guys are dealing with less resources, does that leave men's hoops at risk, or do you see men's hoops still as like a growth revenue stream for the league?
I don't see it at risk at all. I think in our conference, like to your point about most of it going to football, and then there's basketball, and then there's everything else. Everybody's been talking about this sort of like 80, 15-5 model, right? Football to basketball to everything else. And what we did in our league was early on, we wanted to send a clear message that we were serious about investment in student athletes. So we set a floor for investment in rev share at $10 million per school. And the reason we did that is we wanted to signal the marketplace. Number one, we have the guts to be first and do something like this. And nobody else, I know Summer Sharing did a cap, and that's sort of like table stakes. But in the group of 5, group of 6, I don't see anybody setting a minimum, at least setting a standard that we're going to invest in student athletes. Don't think student athletes don't pay attention, to that stuff. But it depends on the school. I'd argue if you look at an institution where basketball maybe has been more prominent historically than football, I wouldn't argue that 80, 15, 5 is what they're doing. I think some are going to do it differently depending on where they need the investment. So I don't see basketball at risk. What I'm encouraged by in our league is that in the American, we set forth that minimum, and I see people investing in all the sports. And that's really important. Like basketball has been a national source of visibility for the American, I think, since the beginning. And if you look at schools in the league, like Memphis, Wichita State, Temple, Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, like we've got a lot of schools that have been at the Final Four. Like
Yep.
basketball is hugely important. And what I have pushed the conference to do is schedule tougher out of the league, right? Because showing really well in the non-conference is what gets you in the conversation in March. That's really important. And I think as a league, we fell off there a little bit, but I'm really encouraged by the investment I'm seeing in a lot of places, not only in what they're doing with talent and the experience, but what they're doing in scheduling, which is really important because like TV hasn't changed since the beginning of time. You create great matchups, you're going to be on national television. And I remind our basketball coaches that all the time. If we have the guts to schedule, it's going to be more opportunities for exposure. And then from there, we can take the business and we can run with it.
That's great. That's great. Circling back on some of the revenue generation you talked about with the private capital potentials and all of their ideas, and obviously you're the executor, so your execution. But in the vein of your execution, have you thought about fan engagement, storytelling, using technology, creating data profiles on fans so you can get back to them with all the things they're excited about, hearing about, or seeing, and we've implemented at Playfly Sports a whole bunch of technology throughout all of our partners, whether it's streaming platforms with our WMT partner at, SEC or Mountain West, or newsletters that aren't marketing vehicles, actually storytelling vehicles about the athletes and the teams and all the successes around an athletic department or a conference. Have you started to think about those types of things and really pushing that out either for the conference itself or actually creating a platform?
Yeah, no, we're knee deep in that, trying to figure what makes the most sense for the conference, Mike. And there's a lot of solutions out there. We've heard about yours. I think what you guys are doing is really innovative and dynamic. And to that word I used, 20 minutes ago about innovation, there's a lot of solutions out there, but not all of them are really innovative. Like I think some of them are kind of like an AAU basketball program, right? Like some of them are setting up shop to just transact. And we're not looking for that. The good news is a lot of our institutions are sitting on a lot of data. We need to figure out how to utilize that data to do all the things that you're talking about. Because again, at the conference level, at the conference itself, we don't have a ton of data. And the reality of we ran a basketball tournament for 13 years and never did a pricing and inventory strategy, never knew who the customer was. We're doing that now, right? So all of those things we have to get into, because the reality of college sports is you have the opportunity to have a 365 connection with your fan. And a lot of it is thanks to recruiting. In the off season, the seasons are in a finite window, but recruiting never freaking ends. It just goes on and on and on. And you have that opportunity for sort of consistent engagement. But if you don't know who people are, it doesn't matter. So what we've tried to do is get a handle on what our institutions have, see what they're doing with it. And I would argue that I think where you're working with some schools that on this, they're going to have the ability to do more with it than they have. I think everybody's point of view is let's get it. As long as we get it, we're in great shape. But you get it, and it sits there, and you don't do nothing with it. You don't even know who your customer is. So we're trying to identify where we've got the big masses of data, and then identify the customer, and then get into trying to identify based on their customer, their trend, and what they do, what their activity is, how we can connect in a more customized and personalized way. Because then and only then, like when I worked at Rutgers as an AD, where I played football in school, just say all the time, like, how many people are coming back? And like our return rate on single ticket buyers was like 12%. And we weren't doing anything for the first time people. Like we didn't give them the parking, and then there was no access to the tailgate, and we didn't set up like something for kids. So we set up all this stuff and we started to mine data. And what we realized was most of the people that had a great time couldn't answer the question about who won the game. They couldn't
Bingo.
answer.
That's
Who
not why
won
they're
the game?
coming.
Yeah, Rutgers or
Bingo.
whoever we played. It was like a checkbox. They couldn't even answer it. And then I said to our staff, we're doing our job. They're coming, they're having a great experience. The result, of course, it matters. But to people like that, it might not. And we're going to see them come back. And it went up from like 12% into the 40s because you have to think about experience. You have to know who your customer is and speak at them a little bit. If you don't speak at them, they won't talk back to you. So we're all in on that, Mike.
By the way, I had
Love it.
never ever
Yeah.
I've lived in New Jersey my whole life. Never went to a Rutgers football game until I was 41 years old. I went last year to a game because Jed Fish, who was my babysitter as a kid, had his Washington Huskies in town. And they actually are doing a tremendous job, actually, there from a fan engagement standpoint now. They have a boardwalk experience. It's all free to the kids before the games. Rutgers really doing a good job from a fan engagement standpoint. Their Black Friday event has become like kind of a must-attend game if you live in the area.
Yeah. When I worked there, the blackout was my favorite game. Like
Quick,
literally. So
yeah, Tim, you hit on recruiting for a second. How has the transfer portal been affecting schools in your league and just the G5 level in general relative
yeah,
to like the power conferences? Is it the same?
it works both ways. What I'm encouraged by, Corey, is our coaches woke up to the idea that the portal, like the bridge doesn't just go one way out, right? You could bring people back in. And what we're seeing this year, if you look at the success we're having in football, Memphis being undefeated, Tulane being nationally competitive and knocking off, ACC team, Big Ten team, North Texas being undefeated, Navy being undefeated, USF coming out of the gates the way they did. These coaches have figured out a way to bring people back across the bridge, right? I think the mark of a great coach is, can you win year after year in a league like ours when 50% of your roster, if not more, is new? That's really, really hard. So the brass tacks are this. There was a thing posted last week. The American gets rated more in the transfer portal than any conference in America. No, we're getting hit more than anyone. The positive side of that is we recruit great talent in this league, and we have great recruiters. So getting them has not been our challenge. Retention has been harder, but where we see the retention, where we're losing it with some student athletes, we're regaining it by bringing transfers out of the autonomy into our conference and into our institutions. But the hard part of this is sort of how the system is set up. This two portal window is trash. And a lot of it was a reaction to COVID and making sure kids didn't get cut short. What's encouraging now is we're at the table on this one portal system. Okay. One window in early January for a finite number of days. That is going to help. That's a good first step. Beyond that, what we need is allow student athletes to transfer once with zero consequence. But beyond the first transfer, I do think there needs to be something brought back that gives the school some protection, whether it's the year in waiting or some other idea that I don't have. But in general, like, we hate that we get rated every year, but we're encouraged by the level of talent that we're bringing into the conference. So, that's going to be a challenge, but I do think going to a one window system in football will change things for the better, so long as we can keep the process moving on how we sort of like not restrict kids' ability to transfer, but arrest the system and create realistic guardrails around it.
This episode is brought to you by Shorts Sports Travel Logistics, the fastest growing leader in college athletics travel and the trusted choice for over 108 athletic departments nationwide. With their promise, Team Travel Made Easy, Sports simplifies every aspect of team travel: air charters, commercial flights, buses, and hotels. By turning complex logistics into a competitive advantage, they've become the trusted partner for programs committed to winning on and off the field.
Transfer portal aside, give us one thing that you would change structurally as it relates to college sports that would improve the sustainability, not just for your league, but across the ecosystem.
I really have been focused on this idea of unified media rights. And, much like you see in the pros, where, in 1961 or whatever it was, when the Sports Broadcasting Act gave the pro leagues antitrust protection to collectively negotiate, they're still riding that wave. I mean, it's just the increments and the bites that you saw. Roger Goodell last week said that they're going to opt out and go to market, right? The market is vibrant for pro sports, but the power in the sale is the unified power. And I always point to the same example. The NBA just struck a massive new media rights deal. NBA ratings are a third of what college football ratings are. And there's 4 billion in the system in college football, and there's much more in the NBA. And I'm not saying this is easy, right? Because we have all these conferences. But the idea of giving college sports the optionality to negotiate in a unified way in the future and amending the Sports Broadcasting Act, I think that would be smart. And it doesn't say you have to do it. But wouldn't we want to have the option? Because I think if you unify the rights, it makes for a much bigger pie than what exists right now. So again, the other thing they go hand in hand, Corey. What would I change? The thing I would change that triggers that is what I would change is that everybody would be open-minded to discussing change. I think we need more of that. Discussing change doesn't mean you're going to change, but thinking about running the business differently is what college sports needs right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. So in that same vein of discussion, if the Power Four conferences were to break away and consolidate themselves in a way and negotiate themselves, how do you position American to manage that? What happens then next? What have you started to sort of game theory that out, and what your
Yeah,
plays would be?
we have. And the thing about it, and this, Mike, from all the background, you have a storied career and a lot of different things that you've done successfully. Control's an illusion, right? The thing about breakaways and expansion and kids transfer, I have no control. I can't control it. When it comes to expansion, I'm trying to make this place a better conference that people want to stay and people want to come to, and we've been encouraged on both fronts. But as far as a breakaway, I don't think there's anybody that can stop that from happening. I don't think the optics of it are particularly good, because the thing people love about college sports is that anything is possible. Like a school like St. Peter's up the street from where I grew up in New Jersey can go to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament and knock off some of the blue bloods on the way. And in college football, that a group of five school can get in the playoff and make a run at the national championship. Eliminating these things takes something really critical out of the business, which people love. They love that they can wake up on September 1st and not know what the hell's going to happen during the football season. They love that, right? So I think if there's a breakaway, you take that element that's so important to fans and so important to people that support these programs out of it. Having said all that, the business side of me, as I game it out, as you eloquently said, is I think there's a ton of opportunities for conferences like ours to create new intellectual property and new assets and new events and new postseasons and all of these things. Because the reality is, we are not getting out of athletics if there's a breakaway. It's too important. It's part of the fabric of every university in our league. And honestly, the idea of doing things different, or there being room for more stuff, which even in the current system, I think there is exciting, because that stuff hasn't been thought through and created and monetized. So whatever way the flag is going to blow is up to the wind. But what we do and prepare for in response, I think, it could be really, really exciting. Having said all that, there's more power and more affinity in staying unified in FBS football than there is with the idea of it starting to come apart.
That's really interesting. Yeah, just a follow-on question to that. What if and I mentioned Power Four, but what if Power Two breaks away, right? And it's the puzzle pieces fall differently. It's interesting to think about your position in the American, and alliances with ACC or Big 12, etc. How do you think about that, right? Obviously, you don't want to necessarily walk from your group of five brethren. So How do you think about dealing with that and making sure you're keeping your optionality open, but being respectful to all your
Yeah,
existing
listen,
partners?
the commissioners meetings, like there's a lot of disagreement on things. Everybody treats each other with respect, and like I respect the hell out of every commissioner in that room. I really do. And I knew most of them. Like Tony, I worked for Tony Petitti when I was in my 20s. Like I've known all of these people for a long time, and it's a hard job. And when people are like, "Hey, what's the holdup with the CFP? What's the holdup with this?" What we all agree on, one thing is like we got to get these things right. Like these are legacy decisions for the industry. They have to be done right. Having said all of that, I think like Brett Yormark has done a remarkable job in the Big 12 reimagining that space and the business. And to partner up, and Brett and I'm actually having dinner with him tonight. We talk all the time about what we can do together to create new assets in the industry that will help us grow. So partnerships, whether it's with the ACC and the Big 12, if your hypothetical scenario happened, or group of 5 and 6 colleagues, I just think whoever's in that group, there's going to be huge opportunities to create and develop things that don't currently exist. And that's always what I've really had the most fun doing is building. You know, like if you take something over that's established, it's great, but you want to build, right? You want to do like, what haven't we done that can be different or exciting? So we would look to partner, with everybody. I think in the ACC and the Big 12's case, the geography makes a lot more sense, right? So I would just leave that there.
Well, no matter what, if you guys are going to align, you got to get John Wall Street right in the middle of that American Big 12 partnership.
What are you
That's
talking about? You're in the
perfect
middle of
space
every
for me.
partnership in America right now. So I don't think you need my
Perfect.
help.
Tim, this was amazing. I guess maybe just leave it with what's your long-term vision with the American? Give us, in 5 years, in 10 years, you talk about, legacy. What is your
Yeah.
legacy when you leave with the conference?
I got to tell you, you guys have asked some really good ones today. I've done a bunch of these, but these are really thoughtful questions. Number one is at whatever day they show me the door here, I want the American to be viewed as the most innovative conference in America, a conference that was tough and had the guts to take risk. Like putting yourselves out there and doing a minimum investment program, creating a wholly owned commercial enterprise, looking at how we share revenue based on performance versus it being based on right, everything is equal no matter what. The guts to do things different, like to put a mascot out there. Like I knew the Twitter people were going to come after us and make fun of it, but guess what? We've got intellectual property. Like we're talking about a shoe deal and a soft drink deal for Soar the Eagle already. Like, don't be surprised if he, drives some kind of car out onto the field at the conference championship game.
He'll also, by
That
the way,
stuff,
be more famous than almost any other athlete in your conference.
maybe if we do it right, he
Yeah.
will be. But innovation is what I would like the legacy to be. And as far as me personally, I really don't care. Like whatever it's going to be, it's going to be. I don't control it. But what I would like to share with you guys is like I feel the weight of the job every single day because I know that decisions are decisions that are going to affect young people and this conference and college sports forever. And I know that however people view it in 20 years, my name's going to be on it. So I take this stuff really, really seriously. And if I do a good enough job, I hope people will speak a kind word. But beyond that, I want to just make sure that I'm constantly focused on one thing every single day. Because what we're talking about is the business. But the reality is we're in the business of providing a great experience for young people and getting them ready for what they do in their life. That's what I want the legacy to be.
That's awesome. Well, that's a perfect segue to wrap here. I love that, Tim. Thanks for joining us on this amazing discussion. Really due to all your comments and talking about innovation and changing the world of college athletics. So thank you again, Corey, for being my partner in this as well. So we're going to wrap here on the John Wall Street Big Business on Campus podcast, powered by Playfly Sports and sponsored by Shorts Travel Logistics. So thanks, Tim, for being here. We loved the discussion, and we appreciate all the time.
Appreciate it, guys.
This was
Thanks
great.
for having me.
Thanks, Tim.